Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gaming.com video. We're going to be talking about PlayStation Now coming to the PC. That's right, the PC. So, according to some rumours which have started from a website by the name of Game Cult, that's with a K, we will actually see the launch of PlayStation Now on the PC platform, and this announcement will take place on the 23rd of August, and we will see the launch in EU first, so that would be Belgium, Netherlands and the United Kingdom, with the United States and then Canada following 1 week after this. This is a pretty interesting announcement because it would allow us, that would be PC gamers, to play previously exclusive PS3 titles. For example, you could play Demon's Souls or what have you on the PC. Now there are some caveats. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what this actually means, you're not going to be able to play those titles at, let's say, 4K with, ridiculous anti-aliasing options and God knows what frame rate, because that's just not going to work. It is a streaming service. So for all intents and purposes, you're going to get a very similar experience to what you would if you were playing this on a native PS3 system. In fact, you're going to have the added latency inherent of a streaming service. So in short, if you've got a PS3 in your living room, then you're probably better to play Demon's Souls on that rather than going ahead and playing it via PlayStation Now. But there are some positives. For one, it's a subscription service, and for two, you obviously get a much larger game library, and for free, well, if you don't own a PS3, then this is a pretty damn good opportunity for you to have, catch up on the back catalogue. I know what you're going to say. Well, how does this work in terms of controllers? Well, unfortunately, we don't know. For example, does it mean that it's going to require a DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 pad? If so, are there going to be updated drivers available for the PC? Yes, I know technically there are ways around that already, but let's face it, especially with the DualShock 3, it's not exactly Sony endorsed, is it? It's kind of a cool situation if it turns out to be true. And most likely, of course, you're going to need a fairly nippy internet connection, probably about 5 megabytes per second. But let's face it, that's not that fast in today's 100+ megabyte connections. This actually works out incredibly well for PC gamers because it means that you get the Xbox exclusives and older PlayStation exclusives. Obviously, the word older PlayStation exclusives is the key word because obviously, if you're wanting to play Uncharted 4, that ain't going to happen because that's released on the PS4. But if you wanted to play, let's say, Uncharted 2, which is obviously on the PS3, as well as a couple of other Uncharted games, well, that's absolutely fine and dandy, sir. It's kind of a bold move by Sony. We are, however, assuming any of this turns out to be true because, well, the rumours could just be that. It could be the source got the information wrong, it could be someone trolling, and obviously without knowing if it's, Bob in Sony's accounting office that said, hey, or perhaps it's someone working in the marketing. Or it could be Sony are liaising with an outside marketing agency to help design, let's say, the posters or the flyers or the pay-per-click advertising or God knows what else. When this type of stuff goes outside of the core group who were originally discussing it, in other words, the decision makers, and it starts going to the wider group of developers or programmers or marketing agencies or whatever, that's when the cat starts coming out of the bag. It's the same of the PlayStation 4 Neo. Like, for example, with the Neo, we all know that when it was within Sony's own offices, no one knew about it. But when it started to be discussed with the Electronic Arts and the Ubisofts and all of the AAA studios, that's when people started to talk about it. Because it's very hard to keep things quiet when, let's say John goes to a meeting, but then John's talking to Natalie, and Natalie happens to Joanne happens to overhear John and Natalie speaking, and it becomes a whole thing. It's just impossible to really keep these things stum, and that's why these things eventually do leak out. But in this case, I imagine some people are not going to be happy with this news, and others are going to be happy with it. I mean, in my mind, it actually makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to do like a whole technical analysis on this or go really in depth, because it's only a few lines, and how true it turns out to be as the time I'm recording this has only been up for a few minutes. But if it turns out to be true, it actually makes a freaking lot of sense for Sony. And me personally, this is, you know, my personal opinion, I'd love for them to also support this on Linux-based distros as well. Well, that was a bit superfluous for me to say Linux-based distros, wasn't it? But anyway, especially if it was Steam, because it would mean that we PC gamers get a very good look in, but it also for Sony means that they get a secondary revenue source, which is outside of the PlayStation hardware division, and 2, it means Sony can stick one to Microsoft. And I don't mean that in a malicious way, I mean it provides Sony a lot of mindshare. One of the phrases that I used a while back is that I don't believe Microsoft give a crap how you buy a game. If you buy a game or their service through Windows 10, or you do it through the Xbox, it doesn't really make a difference to them. They're still getting your pennies, they're still getting your money. On the other hand, this obviously is not the case with Sony in their current model. If you decide to not buy a PlayStation 4 and you don't have any intention of buying a PlayStation 4 Neo, which I guess is technically the same thing, they're fucked. I mean, you know, unless you've got a Vita, but let's face it, that's not really that big of a deal anymore. So realistically, they can't get any money from you from the PlayStation division, because there's no path there. If you're refusing to buy a PS4 because you're a PC gamer, there is no way they can make money from you. So in their mind, it's probably like, hey, you know, these guys want to play our games, they want to play our services, let's go for it, let's make some money out of them. And it just is like a win-win-win for everyone. It's a win for PC gamers, it's a win for Sony, and it's actually a win for PlayStation 4 owners. And you might say to yourself, well, how does it benefit, you know, you? Well, quite simply, it's not taking anything away from you, it's not removing any exclusives to the PS4. In actuality, it's giving Sony more money to A, market the PS4, and B, it gives them more money to actually push their titles. So for example, it could be that, well, hey, now, and this is a pure, you know, speculative thing, it could be that, hey, Sony now can increase the budget of The Last of Us 2 by X amount, or maybe give enough money to Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games to work on more exclusives at the same time, or whatever they're doing. I don't know, I'm just giving examples. So I'm all for this, but I don't want to go like super yay, woo, I'm on the train, and, you know, jumping up and down for joy, because ultimately it's only one website currently which is reporting this. So treat it as a rumour, treat it as speculation, treat it with the salt that it deserves, and when we hear something final and formal, that's when you can make real decisions. But for now, take care of yourselves. Have a good day.